And joining me now is the White House, from the White House, rather, is one of the president's top economic advisors, Peter Navarro. He's a senior counselor to the president for trade and manufacturing. Mr. Navarro, thank you so much for your time here on Meet the Press Now.
Gabe, nice to see you, sir.
Mr. Navarro, yesterday we talked to the previous commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, William Beach. He was appointed and served in the first Trump administration. I want to play some of what he told us.
It's not possible for the commissioner to have that influence. I was never in the room where the data was collected. I was never in the room where there was the data was summed up and then estimated into these well-known numbers that we get on First Friday. In fact, the commissioner doesn't see the numbers until they're completely finished. The current situation does not permit the commissioner to lead a conspiracy to rig the data.
So, Mr. Navarro, as we just heard, he says it's not possible for a commissioner to have that much influence over the labor data. What's your reaction to that?
You know, the fish rots from the head down. The commissioner, if the data is consistently bad, has a responsibility as being the head of that union to figure out what the heck's going on. We had, in this case, the worst miss in 50 years. The worst miss in 50 years. And if you want to look at it from the lens of the failure, it had a catastrophic failure in terms of our economy. If those numbers are indeed accurate and they had to be revised to what they were this week, what that tells you is that the Federal Reserve, there's no question it should have lowered interest rates by as much as 100 or 150 basis points. Okay. So the fact that the commissioner was not running the ship properly and allowed that error to happen is grounds alone for firing. Now, with respect to whether there's manipulation of data, I can tell you there's several documented cases where, in the hands of Obama, when Biden was vice president, documented manipulation of the data. In 2018, for example, we had a situation where things were moved from Q4 into Q3 to make things look like the tax cuts were failed. Now, hear me out. I mean, this is documented, and it was documented by the Federal Reserve. And then there was another thing called the Quick Pay scandal back during Obama's thing. So this idea that it can't be rigged or whatever, I think more importantly that there's so much variable in the data post-pandemic that we need competent people in there, and that's what we should focus on. Okay. Those people are not competent if they give you those kind of numbers.
Okay. Well, Mr. Navarro, a couple things. First, you said the numbers may have been consistently bad. That is different than being rigged. But I do want to press you on this point. The president, just over the last couple of months, for example, on March 7th, he touted the job numbers back then. He said that they were much better. On April 29th, he said that in 3 months, he created 350,000 jobs. On June 6th, he said a lot of jobs are being created. And even today, in his CNBC interview, he said if you look at the jobs report last week, it did show that 1.7 million there was a drop-off of 1.7 million foreign-born workers from March to July. So he's okay with those numbers, but not these specific jobs numbers. How can you explain that?
Well, let me get back. Okay, see, here's the thing. If you're if you want to know how you could cause trouble for the Trump administration, the only thing holding back the Trump economy right now is the failure of the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Let me say that one more. The only thing holding us back is the failure of the Fed to lower interest rates.
We'll get to that point, but I want to ask you on the specifics.
But here's my point. So
numbers.
if 3 or 4 months ago, I'm sitting over in the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and I hate Trump like a lot of those bureaucrats do, what could I do? I could make the job numbers look better in the short run and keep Jay Powell on ice there. It's like, the economy's growing too fast, and then drop that bomb. I mean, that's a scenario. But I think, let's not get lost in that. I think you and I can agree on this. That was the worst miss in 50 years. You and I can agree on this, just as a factual matter. Since the pandemic, for whatever reason we need to get to the bottom to, the numbers have gotten much more variable, and we've got to fix that problem because it has real implications for investors in Wall Street and for Federal Reserve decisions. We can agree on that. And so who's ever running that place, if they're overseeing that, it's fair game to fire them. Get them out of there. My view is they were incompetent. That's incompetent. That cannot happen if they're paying attention.
So I said we get to the point about the Fed, and I do want to ask you about that. Are we in an economic emergency right now to justify the firing of Jerome Powell?
Well, let me do the numbers for you there. My view is that we're 100 basis points at least higher than we are on short-term rates. Now, what does that do?
And yet, but the administration keeps saying that this is the hottest economy. This happened during the Trump administration. This is the problem. I get to come here and say, hey, when we were back in 2018 and they were making bad decisions, instead of growing 3%, we could have grown at 4%. So Powell Powell has had three major blunders. Like back in the first term, he raised rates too fast, and that cost us a point of growth. But during Biden's thing, he raised rates too late, and that allowed inflation to get wildly out of control. And now this time he's raising them too late. But you ask me, is this an emergency? Well, you tell me. 100 basis points too high is over $100 billion of extra interest rates we're going to have to pay on the debt, because 20 to 30% of that debt is financed by short-term rates. It's mortgage rates. A family pays $1,000 or more on their mortgage. It's credit card debt. It's over 1 million jobs, Gabe. Over 1 million jobs you do not create because interest rates are too high. All of that is fact. All of that is statistics. So when you ask, should he be fired? I would say to Jay Powell, it's like resign. You are the worst Fed chair in history, and I've written an op-ed in the Hill on that, and it's Navarro, fact. We have you for a limited time, so I want to move on to tariffs. President Trump this morning, he announced that he's planning to increase tariffs on pharmaceuticals, as we mentioned. Is that going to make Americans pay more for some prescription drugs?
So I have some experience in this. I was what was called the Defense Production Act coordinator during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, we were threatened by China in particular, that being drowned in a sea of virus, holding back our pharmaceuticals. And it was an epiphany then that we needed to bring home our production of pharmaceuticals, and we need to do that. Now, we started to do that at the end of the Trump first term, but Biden dropped the ball on that, and we need to do that. Now, with respect to whether prices are going to be higher, here's another problem we've got to deal with. We're dealing with these pharmaceutical companies, which are oligopolies. One of the practices they do, which I think Americans should really condemn, is what's called cross-subsidization. In other words, they have pills that they sell worldwide, and they stick us with the highest prices because we have the highest incomes and therefore have the highest, lowest elasticity of demand for it. So it's that kind of thing's not fair, and so that one is complicated. But I can tell you, Gabe, I can tell you this: if we do not bring home our pharmaceutical production, we will be vulnerable strategically to the kind of blackmail that China has been using lately with things like rare earths and gallium and things like that. We can't live in that world, Gabe.
And Mr. Navarro, the administration has made that argument repeatedly, that you want to bring manufacturing, pharmaceuticals back to the United States. But the question I have still stands. Can you assure Americans that the price of their drugs won't go up, at least in the short term?
Gabe, you haven't been listening to what I'm saying here. It's like, again, we have a lot of tools to keep drug prices down by putting pressure on the pharmaceutical companies to stop earning all the monopoly prices, stop spending so much money on TV on their ads, and instead give them back to the American people. At the same time, we develop our capabilities. I mean, are you saying to me, Gabe, you'd rather have the lowest possible prices and depend on the rest of the world? and then, like in the pandemic, not have the pharmaceuticals when you need them? Do you want to live in that world? So don't present me with this false choice of prices versus what. You got to say what the what is. The what is a very dangerous strategic vulnerability if we're not able to produce the penicillin, all the antibiotics, everything we need. And we can't do that right now, Gabe. And we need to.
Peter Navarro, top White House advisor, joining us. Sir, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate the administration's perspective.
Pleasure to talk. Thanks.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.